Good afternoon. Welcome to NOAA's ProTech 2.0 Weather Domain Opportunity webinar held by GDI Consulting. My name is Cal, and I am your artificial intelligence host today. With me is Ab Vand, VP for Capture at GDI Consulting and a subject matter expert on these opportunities. Ab has over 30 years of experience in capture and proposal management. He is considered an expert in self-scoring as well as traditional proposal and capture efforts. Ab has managed over 1,000 successful capture and proposal efforts and is a regular contributor to Washington Technology and other online GovCon magazines. He has also held numerous training webinars for various APMP chapters and Apex, previously PTAC, offices throughout the U.S. Before starting, there are a few housekeeping notes I would like to mention. First, this webinar is being recorded and the link to the recording will be sent to you within 24 hours. Second, we will hold a Q&A session at the end. You can send your questions during the webinar by the chat system to the right of your window and Ab will address them at the end. Third, you can download this presentation by clicking on the link under File on the right-hand side panel on your window. We highly recommend you download the slide deck so that you can always refer back to it. So let's see what this webinar covers. We will first have a quick glimpse on GDI Consulting's capabilities. Then, a short discussion on the ProTech Weather Domain Opportunity background, and then we will provide the general details of the ProTech 2.0 Weather Domain Opportunity. Next will come a thorough discussion of the proposal structure and then the scoring system. Finally, before going into the Q&A, Ab will provide his recommendations towards preparing a winning proposal. If I want to summarize the message that we want to convey in this webinar, it is that you should concentrate on maximizing your score for Phase 1, as Ab will explain, as well as ensuring that your proposal is fully compliant and proper documentation is provided for justification of your score. So, with that, I will now hand over the control to Ab to first give a short glimpse on GDI Consulting's capabilities. Ab, you can take over now.
Thank you, Cal, and hello everyone. Thank you for participating in our ProTech 2 Weather Domain webinar. As Cal mentioned, we highly recommend that you download the slide deck, as I might be going over some of the material too fast. And you can always refer back to it if you have any questions. If your questions are not answered in the Q&A, we will hold at the end. And for the Q&A, please submit your questions as we go along, and I will go through them at the end. So let's start with a very quick glimpse on GDIC's capabilities for those of you who are new to our webinar, and I apologize to those who've heard this too many times already. So let's start. So our company has been in business for over a decade. We have an 81% win rate with 226 wins in 2023. We have worked with countless clients, from very large defense contractors all the way to small disadvantaged companies. I will not go into the details of these clips, these slides, so you can always refer back to them later on. So these are some of the agencies we have worked with, showing our past experience with almost all military and civilian agencies in the federal government. Okay, so as far as the services we provide for ProTech 2, we provide free consultation, we provide full proposal development in case you want support on that for Phase 1 and 2, and I'll go into the details of what Phase 1 and 2 are. And we also provide review services in case you want to prepare your proposal in-house, and we can provide reviewing services. Our company as a whole has 4 different divisions. We have a proposal development division, which does eligibility and score assessment, full proposal development, color gate reviews, and staff augmentation. The second division is capture management, in which it does both strategic capture as well as sourcing and qualification for more tactical capture type. Third division is support services, which is more geared towards larger companies, provides competitive intel, black hat exercises, and price to win. And finally, training division provides both proposal development and capture management training to our clients. I have also put in our contact information, so in case you want to contact us after the webinar for technical inquiries, any questions you have with regards to the content of the ProTech 2 weather domain RFP, please contact me. Email is much better. If you would like to set up a consultation call or have questions about our SIRS and services, please contact my colleague Maroon Freedy, and his email and telephone number are here. So once you download, you can use that. Okay, that was a short glimpse. So let's start with ProTech 2, or actually ProTech weather domain background. So this is essentially ProTech 1. And I will concentrate on the weather domain part, but as a whole, the ProTech RFP, which is the professional and technical services one, that's the name ProTech, is a suite of 5 different domains: satellite, ocean, fisheries, weather, and enterprise operations that NOAA has been using for the past few years. We are in the middle of ProTech 1 in most of these. I think ProTech 2 has already started for ocean. Will be starting for weather. So the ceiling dollar value for ProTech domain as a whole, so the 5 different domains, all of them together, was $3 million for ProTech 1. This is changed for ProTech 2, but remember the $3 million, or now $8 billion is for all domains. It's not just for this weather domain. Now, as far as the weather domain is concerned, the initial ProTech 1 RFP had a 2-year base and 3-year optional period for a 5-year total. The solicitation was released in August 2018, and companies were supposed to respond by September 2018. Now, the award date was delayed until January 2020 because there was a major protest that delayed everything for more than a year. So the POP is 15 January 2020 to 14th of January 2025. So NOAA must award before 14th of January 2025 so that they can actually extend the services beyond that using ProTech 2. Okay, so now let's look at some of the spending for ProTech 1. As it started in 2020, you can see that then we had 2021, 9 billion. These numbers are in million dollars. Obviously 2020 and 2021, everybody was hit with COVID, so there was a major drop, and then you can see that it started to be on its feet by 2022, $48 million, and then $54 million, and in 2024 so far $43 million. So these are the spendings for ProTech 1 weather domain. Remember, there are 4 other domains. That's why the value of $3 billion comes from that. Okay, let's look at the next graph, which shows the socioeconomic category spending by that. So $151 million overall was spent towards small business. Now this was split into $57 million for small disadvantage, 46.8 women-owned, 10.85 service disabled veteran-owned, and then another $10 million for veteran-owned. These are essentially the same. 9.07 were just small businesses with no socioeconomic, and there was no spending towards 8A companies. So this shows you the value, and I should mention that essentially most of the spending under ProTech 1 weather domain has been towards small businesses. So even though there were a number of large business awards, most of the spending, most of the contracts task orders have been awarded to small businesses. I would say, I think 95% of it. Okay, and this shows you the top 10. I shouldn't say the top 10. These are the only 10 companies that have received contracts during these years. There are 22 awards, but only 10 companies have been receiving awards. Linker Technologies with the highest number with $85.77 million. And then after that come the rest of these companies. So these are the 10 companies that are currently performing under ProTech 1 and have received contracts. There are 12 others who have not received contracts during these years. Okay, so also let's look at how these companies are spread. So there, in terms of awards, there were 22, 9 large businesses and 13 small businesses. And 4 of these small businesses were women-owned or disadvantaged women-owned small business. Hub Zone 1, STVOSB 3, and small business and disadvantaged small business 5. So overall 13 small business, 9 large, overall 22 awards under ProTech 1. Okay, so that was a very short explanation of how ProTech 1 is currently performing. Let's go and look into ProTech 2 weather domain general details. So we're discussing weather domain for ProTech 2 now. So it's obviously by NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which is under the Department of Commerce. It's a multiple award IDIQ, but it is agency specific, so essentially only NOAA will be using it. The estimated value or the budget is $8 billion now versus $3 billion for ProTech 1. So they're going to expand. If you participated in their recent explanation, they held a online webinar on their plans. They did explain how they are going to expand on the various programs that they have, and that's why they have actually increased their budget. Now, the ProTech 2 is set aside for small business only, versus in ProTech 1, in which it was both unrestricted and small business. But I did mention that they actually, worked with 95% of the money they spent was with small business companies. So this time they finalized it and just put this as a set-aside small business. And so large companies cannot participate under ProTech 2. Number of awards, 25 up to. As I said, ProTech 1 was 22. Now they're considering up to 25 for this one. Subject professional services, obviously, for weather domain. Contract duration, January 2025. And this is a 5-year base plus 1 5-year option. So it's 10 years now. And ProTech 1 was 5 years. This is 10 years. So some major differences. The budget has increased from $3 billion to $8 billion. It is now small business set aside only, and the duration has changed from overall 5 years in ProTech 1 to 10 years in ProTech 2. Okay, so let's start with the proposal structure, the main discussion of this webinar. I want to go into the structure and the scoring system. So the structure, there are 2 phases in this opportunity, both in submission and review by the government. So in phase 1, we have to concentrate on first volume, which is essentially administrative, and then second volume, technical corporate experience. And this is going to be reviewed by NOAA in phase 1, and once they select around 30 companies, they will invite them to phase 2, review their submission in phase 2, and then pick up to 25. So in volume 1 administrative, There are 8 areas. The executive summary, which shouldn't be more than 3 pages. Solicitation documents, obviously 1449, you have to sign on those things. In section 3, you're supposed to provide your cage, UEI, 10, and prime financial documents. In section 4, you're supposed to provide reps and certs. Section 5, professional employee compensation plan. Section 6, uncompensated overtime policy. Section 7, organization conflict of interest mitigation plan, if it exists, if applicable. And then section 8, joint venture documentation, if applicable, if you're going as a joint venture. Also for volume 2 here, you need to provide the first tab, or they're going to review the first tab of attachment J4, self-assessment matrix. So you need to fill that out completely, and that's how your score is automatically calculated by the form that they have put in there. So that's phase 1. Then in phase 2, first of all, for volume 2, technical corporate experience, part 2, attachment 4, the same attachment J4, but here they're going to review phase 2 tab. So the phase 2 tab here will be reviewed there. Also, you have to provide 35 pages written submission for your technical corporate experience. In effect, what you provided in the attachment J4 as contracts to get your score, here in the written submission, you're supposed to explain, give details, give past experience and performance regarding each of those contracts that you're submitting in attachment J4. Volume 3, management approach. Here has a oral presentation that will be coordinated with you to provide a oral presentation of your management approach. Then we have past performance as volume 4, reference information, contract description and performance, 2 pages, and then past performance questionnaires you provide. Finally, volume 5 is the cost price. All of these are in phase 2, obviously. It has 2 parts, pricing template, attachment J6 that they will provide, and then part 2, information about your rates. So these are essentially, this is the structure and the phasing of your submission, as well as how the government is going to review. In phase 1, essentially, they're going to look at the first tab of attachment J4 plus your administrative documents. And then in phase 2, once they pick 30 companies, they're going to look at the 35 pages of your written submission, supporting those claims in J4 plus the second tab of that same document, your management approach in an oral presentation, your past performance information, and your cost price. So this is phase 2. Now, another way of discussing this, so only volume 1 administrative and tab 1 of attachment J4 self-assessment matrix, which is considered volume 2 technical corporate experience, are reviewed in phase 1. If administrative documents provided are compliant, then the government will pick the top 30 submissions based on the highest score from tab 1 and will invite them to phase 2. So essentially what phase 1 does is, for the government I'm talking, first of all, they want to make sure that in terms of administrative documents you're good to go. But what the way it helps the government is that since at the bottom of tab 1, if you look at it, it will give you a score. What they will do is they will rank the proposals and then pick top 30, the top 30. Maybe they receive 60 proposals, for example. They will pick the top 30 and start working on them. So they're not going to even read the rest of those 30 or 40 remaining proposals. So essentially this helps them in terms of saving time. They're going to pick the top 30, move them to phase 2, and start working with them. So that's why you really need to have a high score to actually be, moved to phase 2. You don't want to have been dropped because you were not in the top 30 in terms of scoring. Now in phase 2, the government will review the 30 proposals to pick a maximum of 25 with the highest technical rated offerers. Now, in terms of how they weigh these different things, the weight of evaluation factors, all non-cost evaluation factors, when combined, are significantly more important than price. So pricing is essentially very simple. You provide a maximum ceiling price for different LCATs, and that's it. So pricing should not be an issue that requires a lot of work or focus. Instead, you should focus on the non-price factors. And in terms of their importance in descending order, the most important is technical corporate experience, which is again the same that you actually mentioned in your tab 1 attachment J4 and in continuation tab 2 of attachment J4. Then comes management approach and the oral presentation for that, and then past performance. So as you can see, the way it is structured, again, even in phase 2, your technical corporate experience is the most important factor. So overall for this opportunity, the most important factor to win on this is to get the highest score and stay up there within those 30 or 25 companies to be able to be awarded. And we will go into the details of these scoring in the next few slides. Now, what are the key factors? So ProTech is essentially a self-scoring proposal. So this weather domain, the main factor that drives your success is the score you get in the proposal, as I explained. The 35 pages that you need to write in phase 2 are essentially justification for those contracts that you proposed for tab 1. So everything is geared towards those contracts that you get your score for. So as I said, phase 1, tab 1, attachment J4 is the most important part. Of course, you must ensure that you pass the administrative requirements. In phase 2, again, the justifications you provide for your score, tab 2 of J4, and the 35 pages of written justification are the key players, the key factors, because as I mentioned, these are more important than, say, management approach or past performance, and those are essentially easy things to prepare. And note that pricing is essentially providing ceiling pricing and is the least important factor. So these are some of the issues to consider as we are going through the scoring system. So let's start with the scoring system in ProTech 2 weather domain. So there are 3 main areas: scientific services, professional services, engineering services for systems and facilities. So this is, if you go to attachment J4, these are the main areas. Now, under each of these main areas, there are sub areas. For example, for scientific services, there are 10 sub areas. For professional services, there are 11, and for engineering services, there are 6. Now, under each of the sub areas, you have elements, and essentially scoring is based on those elements. So 32 for scientific services, professional services, 22 elements or sub elements, you can say, and then engineering services for systems and facilities have 19. Overall, 73. So there are 73 elements that you need to get scores for, and so it's important to actually familiarize yourself with attachment J4, what the main areas are, the sub areas, and the elements or sub elements, however you want to call them. 73 of them, and that's where your contracts should be. So if you wanted to, in a very imaginary way of thinking, there are 73 elements. You need to provide 3 contracts for each to get the maximum score. So if you could actually provide 3 contracts for each of those 73 elements, you would get the maximum score. Obviously, no company can do that, but I just want to give you an idea. So those 73 elements are the most important part for understanding how the scoring works. Now, moving forward, let's see what the contracts that you are supposed to provide towards those elements are. So the contracts should prove that you have that sort of experience for that particular element. Now, the contracts can be task orders, they can be call orders, there's BPAs, standalone contracts, subcontracts, so you can actually use subcontracts, grants, and even agreements. So all types of different types of, so to say, contracts are allowed. In terms of the value and the relevancy has 2 factors. The relevancy, obviously the scope must be towards that particular element, and I will explain what that is. But there's also a requirement with regards to the value of the contract. So the contracts must be in the range of $500K to say $10 million. That's what the RFP has mentioned. So you need to provide contracts that are above 500K. Now, remember that if you're providing task orders, you can't use a IDIQ or BPA itself. You have to provide a task or a call order that is above 500K. And you can use multiple of those. So each of those are considered one standalone, so to say, task order. So maybe you have an IDIQ with 10 task orders and all of them are above 500K, so you can use those 10 contracts. Now, in terms of recency, the time, these contracts must be either, if they're ongoing, they must have 12 months, 1 year of performance. So you can't use a contract that you got, last month or 2 months ago. 12 months of performance must be under your belt. Or if they're completed, they must have been completed within the past 6 years. It doesn't matter when they started, but it's important that the completion date must be within the past 6 years. So these are the requirements for these contracts that you need to have as justification as for your experience. Okay, so let's look at how it works. So this is a picture of part of a that attachment. So the main area is called scientific services, which is blue above. The sub area is called modeling services, and under modeling services we have one of them is called pre-processing, develop, operate, and maintain pre-processing activities, blah blah blah. This is an element. So for each of these elements you must provide contracts. Now, to get the highest score, and I'm reading off this drop down menu that you can see here. The drop down menu has different items that you can pick. So first one says my company has extensive demonstrated technical experience from 3 projects. Or you can say my company has moderate demonstrated technical experience from 2 projects. And then my company has limited demonstrated technical experience from 1 project. So if you have done 1 project that is towards pre-processing, you pick that 3rd one. If you have done 2 projects, you pick that 2nd one, which is moderate. If you have done 3 or more, you pick the 1st one, which is extensive. And based on each of these, you get more points. The 4th one says my team has demonstrated technical experience from 1 to 3 projects. Now, this means that I, as the prime, don't have this, but my team has. Now, understand this. When you pick this and say my team has, in phase 1, you don't get any extra points. So this does not add to your score. If you've not if you don't have any experience in an area, but one of your team members has that experience, it doesn't add up to your score in phase 1. However, the RFP says that in phase 2, it's a plus if you have a team member who has, experience in other areas. So that's why teaming is encouraged, but it's essentially for phase 2 and not phase 1. So don't try to create teams to get extra points because they don't count. Projects that have been performed by your team member, it's when I say team, it means a subcontractor or a CTA, not JV. JVs are different. A subcontractor, those don't increase your score in phase 1. So remember that. And then the fifth one is no demonstrated technical experience. And the default for all of these, if you open up this attachment, is that all of them are, this fifth one, no demonstrated technical experience. Then you have to click on it and pick another one if you do have experience. So that's how you actually fill out this tab 1. And then in those 35 pages, you write towards each of these contracts. So for example, for this pre-processing, you've picked the first one. My company has extensive demonstrated technical experience. So in your 35 pages, you must actually cite the 3 projects that you have for pre-processing, give information, give discussion of what you did and the scope of the project, blah, blah, blah. So this is how it correlates between phase 1 and the 35 pages that you provide in phase 2. Now, in terms of the scoring, in order to understand it better, so these are the 5 different picks that you can have for each of those elements. So my company has extensive, it has 3 points, you can consider it as 3 points, and you need minimum projects 3, so at least 3 projects. My company has moderate demonstrated technical experience, you get 2 points and you need 2 contracts. My company has limited, it means that you have 1 contract, you get 1 point. If you have 1 contract that has that element in its scope. Now, if your company doesn't have it, but your team has, you get 0 points in phase 1. But as I said, it's a plus for phase 2. And your team member must have 1 to 3 contracts, doesn't matter, more than 1, you can say. And you get that point, not a point, but a plus in phase 2. Now, if you pick no demonstrated technical experience, which is the default, you get 0 scored there. So this is how the scoring works for these menu selections. Now let's see how they're going to score you. So they're going to score you on 3 systems. It's called breadth. So breadth score, meaning how many elements out of the 73 total elements are you covering. So that's called breadth. The more elements that you cover, the better. Maybe you have only 1 contract per per element. Here it doesn't matter. As long as you have 1 contract, it's covered. So there are 73. If you get the 73, the maximum score is 1. So the way ProTech 2 scoring works is that the smaller the score you get, the better. So don't try to go for above 1. 1 is the smallest and the best. Everything you get which is lower will be above 1 for all of these. So that was breadth. How many elements you cover with your contracts. Divide by 73, and that's your score for breadth. Now depth, they want to see how many of those are extensive, how many are moderate, and how many limited prime experience. So for extensive, they multiply by 3. For moderate, they multiply by 2, and limited, they multiply by 1, which is itself, and then divide it by the total number times 3. So say, for example, let's give an example to understand this. Say you have, of those elements, 5 of them you have extensive experience, 2 of them you have moderate experience, and 6 of them you have limited experience. Okay, so here you multiply 5 because it's extensive by 3, so 5 times 3 is 15. 2 moderates and you multiply by 2, so 2 times 2 is 4, and then 6 limited you multiply by 1, which is itself is 6. The overall divided by the total number, which is 6 plus 5 is 5 plus 2 is 7 plus 6 is 13. The total is 13, and I've missed it. 13 times 3 is 39. So that should be 39 divided by 39, and that's the number you get. So that's how you actually calculate the depth score. So once again, extensive prime experience, the number times 3, the number of moderate prime experiences times 2, the number of limited prime experience times 1. You add them together, and then you divide this by the total number of experiences, so the total number of extensive plus moderate plus limited times 3, and that's the depth score. And again, 1 is the best. Usually you get above that, 1.5, 1.8, 2, whatever. Now the final score, which is based on these two, is called proximity score, and there's a special calculation for it. So the square root of 1 minus the depth score raised by 2, and then 0.49315 minus breadth score raised to 2, and the square root of this whole thing. And the best score you get here is 0.50685, and everything will be above that. So this is the minimum score, best score. So at the end of the day, when they're ranking companies, I said that, you know, in phase 1 they're going to pick the top 30. The way they're going to pick those top 30, they're going to look at the proximity score calculated, pick the 30 companies that have the lowest score for proximity score. So the smaller the better. So they're going to pick the 30 companies there. This is how they're going to calculate. Now, another way of looking at this, I've written it here, essentially the same discussion I mentioned. Just for the proximity score, I've shown it in a mathematical way. So square root of 1 minus depth score raised to the power of 2 plus 0.49315 minus breadth score raised to the power of 2, and then, you know, square root of this. So this is how you calculate the proximity score formula. The other two essentially the same thing that I mentioned. So this is how the scoring is calculated, how they're going to actually rate you both in phase 1 and essentially in phase 2, because as we discussed, these experience elements are the most important part in phase 2 as well. In phase 2, essentially you have to prove that you actually did these projects with those 35 pages of explanation. Now, I want to point out one thing. Perhaps this is some sort of a mathematical problem, but you really need to, this is not a straightforward scoring, so you really need to juggle around your contracts. Let me give you an idea. In scenario 1, we have 30 elements with a value of extensive experience, okay, and 15 elements with a value of limited experience. If you calculate the proximity score for that, first you have to calculate the breadth and then depth. The proximity score comes to 0.2541. Now, let's take, say another company has the same 30 elements with a value of extensive, and then 15 elements with a value of limited, but they don't claim the 15 elements. They say, hey, we have only 10. If they say we have only 10 and say 0 for the other elements, so 10 elements only, look at the proximity score. It's 0.1754, which is better than scenario 1, in which the company claimed for all 15 elements of limited. So you can see it's not a straightforward scoring. You really need to juggle around your contracts and the elements that you're covering to see what is the best score that you can actually come up with. Okay, so I think I made the point there. Now, a few recommendations. They're essentially straightforward, but I did want to make them. So on phase 1, concentrate essentially on your score on tab 1 of attachment J4. And as I said, consider different scenarios to make sure that you will get the best overall score for depth and for breadth, and hence the final score. Try to maximize your score. As I mentioned, look into the different scenarios and sharpen your math, so to say. And as I mentioned again, don't try to go for partnering for phase 1 score, because as we saw, you get 0 for any projects that your team members have performed. So partnering for phase 1 is not useful. It doesn't mean that you should not try to actually bring in partners, because then you can use them in phase 2. But essentially, partnering is not very important in this ProTech 2, and there is a clause in the RFP that they do allow you to bring in any subcontractors at the task order level when you're executing it. So do consider that. Now, in phase 2, you need to concentrate on your score justification, because again, the driving factor in phase 2 is again those past experience elements and the score you've got. That's the most important part. But here you need to provide justification. So those 35 pages and the write-ups and the documents, supporting documents, all of that is important. Provide concise and specific justification for your score. Actually, it's 35 pages, not 40 pages. So in volume 2, part 3, it's very important that you provide very concise justification for the contracts that you're providing. And then prepare your oral presentation, which is the next most important thing. Know how you have come up with your score, have full knowledge of your contracts, and be trained in oral presentations. So if you don't have staff who are trained in oral presentations, try to get the training done before it's needed, because you do need to shine there, because as if you remember, in terms of importance, or the oral presentation in terms of your management approach is more important than your past performance. And past performance is usually straightforward. You just provide that information. So these are my recommendations to have a probability of win on this. Try to be within those 30 companies that are selected in phase 1 by sharpening your score in phase 1, and then in phase 2 sharpen your justification. Those 35 pages are the most important part. Okay, and just to remind you, as I mentioned, we can provide full support for phase 1 score calculation and optimization, as well as phase 2 full proposal development, writing all those justifications and other areas, cradle to grave, full and multiple reviews, optional oral presentation training. We can provide training. We can also prepare your PowerPoint presentation if need be. So all of that is can be provided in when we take full control of the proposal with a dedicated proposal team. In case you're doing it in-house, we can provide review services in which we provide score optimization. Again, we check to make sure that you're getting the maximum score, and then do 2 rounds of proposal and compliance reviews to make sure that everything is in place. So these are the services that we provide specific to ProTech 2. Okay, so now we've reached the Q&A session part, and I'm going to read off these questions. There are a number of these questions. I had promised to actually finish within 30 minutes. I have gone over 12 minutes already, but I will try to answer some of these questions, and then if there are more, I will try to do that by responding back to email. Okay, a lot of questions. First question from Alicia. Yes, Alicia, we are at the draft solicitation stage. Her question is whether the full RFP has dropped, or we are at the draft RFP stage. So the full RFP is not yet out. It's expected to be issued in September, so about a month from now. Remember that they have to award before mid-January 2025, so they are behind schedule. They should actually issue the RFP so they have enough time to actually go through the selection process too. Question from Steven. Why have they decided to disallow large businesses from participating in the weather domain RFP? Okay, it seems that since in ProTech 1 weather domain, in the performance of that, the majority of task orders were actually given to small businesses. I think around 95% of it. It seems that they've decided to, switch completely to a small business set aside for ProTech 2. Nancy's question: what is the size standard for small businesses in this RFP? Okay, so the next in this RFP is 541330. So the size standard is $25.5 million average annual receipt of contracts. Question, so if you're below that, you consider small. Question from Bob. Please repeat what you said about use of subcontractors for different phases. Okay, so what I said is that subcontractors are useful in phase 2, but not for scoring in phase 1. So you cannot get more points for elements that you don't have experience in, but your subcontractors have. This doesn't work. So, but NOAA is going to look at your team composition in phase 2. So it is a plus to have a strong team, and you can actually talk towards it in your management approach. But as far as your score and phase 1 is concerned, there is no value in bringing in a subcontractor solely for that. It won't add to your score. Okay, so a lot of sales related questions. Yes, if you need to set up a call or have questions on our pricing or services, things like that, please contact Maroon Freedy, my colleague. His contact info is on the slide deck that you can download. So I'm not going to cover these sales related questions. Please contact Maroon Freedy on that. Question from Jack: is there a minimum requirement towards the number of elements under each area that we need to have experience towards? No, Jack, no minimum requirement. So the driving factor is your score. If you can get a high score by just going for one area and having maximum for under all of the elements under that area, and your score is high, NOAA doesn't care. They're going to rank you by at the end of the day by your score. So how you get it, it's up to you. Question from Melissa: can we bid as prime and then also as part of a JV? No, unfortunately. So you can only provide one proposal, either as a JV or as a prime. When I say as a JV, I mean being part of a JV. Sandra: if you're going as a JV, should we select my team or my company in the drop-down menu? Yeah, okay, so those drop-down menus started with my team or my company. Okay, so when you're going as a JV, if the contract is in the name of the JV or in the name of either of the members, you pick my company. So either my company is extensive or limited, whatever, but it's my company. You don't pick my team. My team is when you're using subcontracting and things like that. Jeanette, question from her: you mentioned that we can't use the IDIQ contract vehicle itself and must use task orders under it. our task orders are less than 500K each. Can we have a collection of task orders like it was allowed in OASIS and use that? Unfortunately not. So this was one of the questions that was posed to NOAA, and they have explicitly said that you cannot have a collection of task orders. So you need to have, if you're using task orders, your task orders must as themselves be above 500K and performed within the past 6 years, or be ongoing with 1 year of performance. You can't use multiple task orders or the IDIQ or the BPA vehicle itself, unfortunately. Another question from Jack: how many past performance information are we to provide? So they've said that between 3 and 8, but remember, they must correlate with those contracts that you are providing for the demonstrated technical experience in phase 1 and 2 under attachment J4. So they must be the same ones that you actually provided discussion in those 35 pages as well, the same thing. So you can't provide past performance for contracts that you're not actually proposing for those experience elements. Question from John. Okay, so you're having difficulty downloading the slide deck. No problem. Just leave your John, just leave your email on the chat system and say you need the slide deck, and I will email it to you after the webinar. Anybody else also, if anybody has any the same problem and you can't download the slide deck, just type in your email and your request to receive the slide deck, and I will send it to you by email. More sales related questions. So I think I have answered all questions. I've gone way over my time. I will go through the questions again as it is a long list, and I might have missed some. So if I missed anything, I apologize ahead of time, but I will respond to you by email if I find out that I didn't respond to some questions. So we are at the end of the webinar. Thank you again for participating in this webinar, and we look forward to seeing you in our future webinars as well. Have a wonderful day.